As strong as war, as soft as peace, the carefree children are full of joy despite all the hardships that they have suffered. The conflict had paused for the moment. There were no guns with bullets, no bloodshed, or bodies wrapped in blue clothes. The place they lived in was finally peaceful. War is so strong that it can destroy everything, and life was still difficult because peace is fragile. These words of Nicole Tung describe a photograph of children playing in the rubble of what was once a stadium in Iraq. Tung, a 37-year-old war photojournalist from Hong Kong, uses her camera to document the atrocities committed on innocent civilians trapped in war. I felt a sense of grief as I witnessed these atrocities through Tung's photos in my photojournalism class. While I was disturbed at the sight of death and destruction, I was secretly happy to be alive. I also felt a sense of guilt at my lack of engagement, but Tung's photos changed my perspective on war and photojournalism. I was inspired by her selflessness to sacrifice her own safety to ensure that the sufferings of those living amidst conflict are recorded, recognized, and remain at the forefront of our minds. I nominate Nicole Tung for a profile in courage because in every photojournalistic moment, she endangers her well-being to bear witness to the sufferings of those living amidst conflict with responsibility, empathy, and sincerity. What will follow is an understanding of her responsibility to record the truth, the risk involved in archiving misery with empathy, and her sincere efforts to raise awareness about the horrors of war. Tung broke through barriers and overcame adversity to record the truth of what she calls the war on civilians. There is something fascinating about the way she understands war and conflict. Tung asserts that war and conflict photojournalism is not just about taking pictures of people firing bullets at each other. It is more about the lives of civilians devastated by those bullets. But why should we care about the problems of civilians in war? People a world away from us. Tung wants us to care so that the sufferings of such people do not fade away or are forgotten. These people don't have a voice or a choice because they are imprisoned in that war. Tung reminds us, just because we are living a peaceful life does not mean everyone lives that way, and it can change quickly. What is happening to them could also happen to us. Now, recall when you saw a photograph from a war zone. Recall your thoughts and emotions. Were you disturbed or disgusted at the sight of death and destruction, or were you moved by it? Did you feel empathy for the people in the frame? Did you feel empathy for the person standing behind the frame? Have you ever thought what is going on beyond the frame? Well, if you haven't, let me explain. While war photojournalists must live in conditions and circumstances that can be called nightmarish, there's always a high probability of them dying on the front line. Photojournalist Teru Kuwayama, in How to Shoot Without Getting Shot in a War Zone, writes, quote, "The daily mechanics of photographing in a war zone don't have much to do with photography. It's mostly about getting from point A to point B without getting your head cut off," unquote. According to Reporters Without Borders, of the 686 killings of photojournalists since 2014, 335 have been recorded in war zones. Even if photojournalists make it back safe, their experiences scar and burden them because, dear audience, the camera is not a shield. Thus, war photojournalists suffer from PTSD, stress, depression, and anxiety. Additionally, in war photojournalism, the loss of life, job, friends, and colleagues is fairly common. Thus, for Tung, being a war photojournalist equates to putting everything at stake, including her life and well-being. Despite this courage, resilience, and empathy, the world has accused Tung of exploiting human tragedy and being immoral. People argue filming or photographing individuals in times of vulnerability is highly unethical. War photojournalism does not equate to exploiting human tragedy, but the cost of bearing witness with sincerity. Tung has witnessed the sufferings of countless people. She has seen people dying, almost died herself, and lost close friends and colleagues. This has given her enough reasons to quit. She often asks herself if it is ever worth risking her own life for that one photo. To her, the answer is always yes. And dear audience, it should be the same for us. James Foley, another war photojournalist that Tung knew in Libya and Syria. Tung was devastated when he was kidnapped and brutally murdered by ISIS in 2012. She recalls, half of his head was gone, and at that moment I could not photograph anything because I was so stunned by what I had seen. Dear audience, it takes immense courage to witness people's sufferings, yet distancing thoughts of pain and pretending that you're all right to stand behind the camera and relive those moments of pain and suffering, all for the world's eye. As Susan Sontag says, what we as viewers fail to understand is how important it is to take such pictures because they bring to the world's attention the lethal effects of war and conflict, problems that would not have been recognized had it not been for those pictures. James Knockway, the most famous war photojournalist, argues, for me, the strength of photography lies in its ability to evoke humanity. If war is an attempt to negate humanity, then photojournalism can be considered as the opposite of war. Thus, let us all acknowledge that war photojournalists do not seek to exploit human tragedy. Instead, they hope to expose its horrors. For her mission, Tung has filmed the legacy of destruction in the aftermaths of war. Her pictures show a striking reality of what human greed for power can do. She conveys the human cost of violence without showing bloodshed, yet leaving a long-lasting bitterness even when you look away. Despite her challenges, what gives her the courage is witnessing people going through terrible conflicts, but maintaining their sense of pride and hope. These people in wars face unspeakable difficulties, yet they can smile, they can be hopeful. A lesson, a reminder for people like us who are blessed to live in peace. I nominate Nicole Tung for a profile in courage because in every photojournalistic moment, she endangers her well-being, to bear witness to the sufferings of those living amidst conflict and to raise our awareness. She strives to use this privilege, this power, with utmost responsibility, empathy, and sincerity. We need her as a part of the Fourth Estate to record and archive the reality of the war on civilians in our consciousness. Tung embodies Knockway's insight. Everyone cannot be there. That's why photographers go there, to create pictures powerful enough to overcome the diluting effects of mass media and to shake people out of their indifference, to protest, and by the strength of protest, to make others protest.